first witness.
Good.
I'm calling Kevin Cahill.
Good evening.
Let me have your name and spell your last name for me.
Kevin Cahill, Cahill.
All right. And your address, please?
83 Peaker Avenue, Mastic Beach, New York.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Good.
Are you familiar with the property located at 1?
You know what? It's not going to work this, you're not going to need a microphone.
Just move on.
You got to share the mic.
Yeah.
So why don't you take it out of there, then hand it back. We can't use two mics, I don't think. Go ahead.
That'll work, all right. Are you familiar with the property located at 110 Old Northport Road, Kings Park?
I am.
In what way are you familiar with that property?
For several years after I got out of the service, I worked as a laborer for several cesspool companies. I used to drive a truck, and I used to pick up precast concrete products at Carborough Industries. And later on, when I started my own company, I used to bring sand and gravel to Carl Carlson, and I parked my truck there for 6 months. That was approximately 1984, 85.
That was when you parked your truck there?
Yes.
But your operations, when you were the laborer, started when?
1979, and went on for approximately 6 years. And then I was in my own company for probably another 6 or 7 years. And when the economy turned bad, I went back to work for other people and went back to work for J. Burns Sanitary Systems. That was probably 89 to 95. And again, used to go in and purchase concrete products from Carl.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to use, just, can we get the second mic, so? Okay, now you have your own. Thank you. Good.
I can stand wherever I want.
Yep, that is, yep.
Are you aware of who purchased the property?
Is that on? Huh? Can you hear it?
It's working? Do you know who purchased the property after 2011 or in 2011?
Just from what I hear, it's not KPE, Mr. Highline, and this gentleman here.
You're indicating Mark Underberg?
Yes.
Underberg, Underberg. Having seen the property in operation under the Carlsons, are similar uses taking place on the property currently?
I would say closely to exactly the same. The only difference that it's not as robust an operation as it has been in the past. You know, it seems more of a mom and pop operation rather than, you know, a thriving business.
So the operations that you did witness were screening, crushing, there was truck parking and precast work, as well as a concrete batch plant.
Yes.
And there was always the storage of heavy equipment on the property.
Always, as far back as I can remember. I'm originally from Kings Park. I lived in Fort Salonga and Kings Park most of my life. So I always had cause to be in that neighborhood, and you know, there was always equipment there.
And now you've visited the site since then and recently, and operations appear to be similar to that under the Carlsons.
Yes, same equipment.
So can you explain a little bit about the precast operation in terms of how that is done in terms of moldings and things like that?
Well, the concrete is either mixed on site or trucked into the site, depending on how much is needed. They're poured into steel forms and cured on site, usually for 24 or 48 hours. Then the forms are stripped and the precast is removed from the forms and either stacked up and stored to be sold at a later date or whatever they were making at the time. It would either be precast rings or vaults or light post stanchions, several different products that were made on that site.
So it would either be concrete that was created on site through the aggregate processing and batching, or through the use of a ready-mix delivery of material to a mold.
Yes, if you didn't need that much, if your volume demand was not that much, you might bring it in, through another company. It may not pay to mix your own concrete at that time,
right.
if you don't have it, the demand.
Okay, thank you very much. The next witness I'd like to call is John Jeswali.
May I have your name, please?
John Jeswali, Gesuale,
And your address?
27 Rawlings Drive, Rawlings Drive, Melville, New York.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
John, are you familiar with the property located at 110 Old Northport Road,
Yes, I
Kings Park,
am.
New York? In what way are you familiar with that property?
I am, my property borders that property. I'm a neighbor.
So you were aware of the Carlson's activities from what years?
From, let's say 69 to 69, 70 throughout.
And up until now, you're still currently operating your facility, so you've witnessed it from 69 till the current use?
Yes.
Can you describe the early years of the processing of concrete at the Carlson property?
Making of the precast rings, screening concrete, crushing the broken concrete when the rings used to break. Always parking equipment there. They had a shop, an office building.
So the crushing would occur periodically, it was not an everyday
Yes.
operation?
Well, a lot of times the rings would break if the mold wasn't poured right, and they'd have a lot of excess concrete, and they'd recycle it and use it like back into the product. They'd have to crush it.
So a portable crusher would be brought to the property?
Yes.
Periodically?
And they crushed their natural stone too that they screened.
Okay, so there was sand screening and rock crushing as well as concrete crushing?
Correct.
And it would occur every year or every other year? I mean, periodically? I just want to give
Periodically in the last 30 years.
I'm just trying to give a gauge. If it was busy, it would be every year. If it was not busy,
It was always constant.
okay, very good. There was a batch plant on the property, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that is commonly known as a hopper, where they would make the concrete
It's a ready-mix plant to make ready-mix.
to make ready mix. And after that plant was taken down, the Carlsons, how would they produce their precast rings?
They'd have ready-mix trucks bringing in.
And you witnessed the trucks come in and pour the molds?
Yes.
Okay. And that has occurred on the property currently as well,
Yes.
the pouring of precast rings?
Yes.
That's basically it. Thanks. The next witness is George Highline.
George Heinlein, Heinlein, 1418 Elmer Street in Wantua.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
George, you are familiar with the property located at 110 Old Northport Road in Kings Park.
Yes, I am.
In what way are you familiar with this property?
I'm a current landowner, and I was formerly the mortgage holder.
And when you were the mortgage
You
holder,
need to be closer to the mic. They can't hear you upstairs, I'm
I
sorry.
was formerly the mortgage holder, and I'm currently an owner in the property.
and from what years did that span on the mortgage?
I'm going to say 2006 through 2011.
Okay, and then you purchased the property from the Carlsons?
That's correct.
Okay. So during the time you held the mortgage, you did visit the site to observe the activities occurring on the property?
That's correct.
And if you could describe those activities, please.
It was the manufacture of materials, as discussed, precast, saw activity of trucks delivering materials, machine movement on the site. I wasn't on the site for long periods of time, 10 minutes or so, but there was continuous activity during the mortgage time span.
And the Carlsons were winding down operations. They weren't as active as they had originally been, but so you would say operations were slowing down in the years, say 2007 onward? I just want to gauge that for the board.
Yes, they were actively trying to sell the property, and hence my involvement. It was my understanding that at one point in time, they were an extremely large operation. They were getting on in years and were looking to, sell off the property, but, they had to make a living.
But on a daily basis, is your understanding that Carl Carlson would go to the property, open the office, and do some type of work, either trying to sell product, trying to sell rings, pouring a ring? I mean, there was activity occurring on the site.
There was always, what I presumed, employees on the site. There were people there, cars parked, trucks in and out.
Okay, thank you. And during the operations now, you're continuing that precast operation in terms of pouring molds, or at least processing the material to prepare to pour molds?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next witness is Mark Underberg.
Mark Underberg, Underberg, 400 Post Avenue, Westbury, New York.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mark, in what way are you familiar with the property located at 110 Old Northport Road?
I was previously a mortgage holder, and I am now a current member of KPE.
And you perform on the site, the operations, you are a site manager of the property as well?
I am.
And in part of that operations, you are currently doing what on the property?
We are crushing concrete, screening sand, pouring precast, storing trucks, repairing trucks, stockpiling aggregate, doing pretty much what you went into in your presentation.
Okay. With respect to the precast molds, you had ready-mix brought to the site recently or in the last year or so? I mean, since your purchase in 2011, you had ready-mix brought to the site?
I have.
And you had molds poured for the creation of precast rings?
I have.
Correct. Thank you. The last witness will be Claudio Valenti.
Claudio Valenti, 248 Ocean Avenue, Northport, New York.
Spell your last name?
Valente.
And raise, oh, you can't. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing
Yes,
but
I
the truth?
do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Claudio, in what way are you familiar with the property located at 110 Old Northport Road in Kings Park?
We delivered ready-mix concrete for pouring the precast material.
I'm going to show you some documents, and you can identify them for me at this time. If you could start with the first, and we'll submit these into evidence, but what are these items you're looking at, or at least the first one?
These are tickets that represent concrete delivered to this location.
And this was during what year was this delivered?
03 of 2011.
Okay, and that was for delivery
Of 12 yards of concrete to be used for precast.
okay. So your company would deliver the material, this is a
Correct.
receipt for the delivery
Yes.
to the site for the use on site to pour
Yes.
rings. If you could take a look at the next receipt.
This would be 06 of 2010. Same,
And that's a delivery to which company?
for Carborough Industries.
And that's roughly for the use to pour?
Same, it was always consistent for the same
Okay.
use of the concrete.
And this is what the Carlsons were doing? They were contacting you or similar
Yeah, they
companies?
would call us on a regular basis, and we would deliver concrete to be poured for his precast rings.
Okay. If you can just briefly go through the others, it might be just sufficient to
Okay,
state the dates that you're
yes,
doing.
this is one is 08 of 09, same 12 yards of concrete. And the next one will be 01 of 09, again 12 yards of concrete. That's a full truckload, by the way. This one here is AH Material, 5 yards of concrete for the same use of precast material. All at 110 Old Northport Road.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Could I ask a quick question? Did Mr. Valenti deliver any of those tickets?
Let me see. I did on occasion, actually, this one here on 01/2012. I did. My name is on it.
But you are the owner of the company.
I am the owner of the Kings Park Ready Mix. I have on many occasions personally delivered concrete to that location. Yes.
Thank you. I'll submit these to evidence, and this concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. All right, if you would like to be heard, I would ask you to line up. Is there anyone that wants? Please line up so that I don't have to wait for everyone to come up to the podium. Come on in. Oh, it's the attorneys. Okay. All right.
My name is Reed Smith,
Spell your last name, Mrs. Sheets.
Smith,
Okay, your address?
31 Woodland Drive, Kings Park.
All right. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Before I even start, and I only have a very short presentation, I strongly object to the board receiving that substitute application. The application that I researched a month ago was in the planning department and was the official application. This one is vastly different than the one that resides in the planning department. I know specifically Exhibit 20 and 21 are now Exhibit 27. Where'd the other 5 exhibits come from? There were also affidavits that were not in the original, and now they're showing up. So I would ask you to look at what you received tonight, and then look at what the official record is.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I'm here tonight, obviously, to convince you to deny the applicant's request for a certificate of existing use. As you know, Section 32273 of the Town Zoning Board, the code requires that such a certificate, if the property has been in non-conforming use and that has been abandoned for more than 12 consecutive months. I lived in Kings Park 40 years. We're only talking about 1 year. If it was abandoned 1 year, that's what fits this. The case before you tonight, in its application's main and number one purpose, the number one purpose is, quote, permit a precast concrete cesspool fabrication facility. That's the reason for the application. The attorneys for this application, Farrell Fritz, PC, are attempting to prove continued use of the property by obtaining affidavits from the owners, both current and prior. I refer to Exhibit 20 or 27. Depends upon which one you're looking at. Sworn to by Mr. Carl Carlson. And the other exhibit was 21, sworn to by Clifford Carlson. Unfortunately, by oversight or by design, I don't know which, neither of these gentlemen mentioned fabrication of precast concrete cesspools in their application, or in their affidavit. That's not mentioned. They swore to a lot of other things, but not to the main reason for the application. Excuse me. Therefore, the affidavits do not attest to the continuous non-conforming use they wish to affirm. No other assertions appear in their application either, in the whole thing, as far as precast. The board should take these critical omissions into account when deciding whether to grant a certificate of existing use. And one more point. My research indicates that only In only 3 cases did this board grant certificates to applicants that exceeded the 12-month limit of nonconforming use. The most famous was the one argued by attorney Howard Packman. I'm sure many of you know him. He argued that if an entity abandoned their nonconforming use involuntarily, critical word, even if it exceeded the 12-month period, a certificate should be granted. And he referenced the case of Birmingham versus Cartel, 275 Appellate Division 457. Mr. Packman's applicant was this property located on the corner of Meadow Road and Jericho Turnpike. And it was owned by Trans Capital, and the case was 10300, 1992. The crux of the case was that Trans Capital went bankrupt and didn't cease their business voluntarily. Attorney Packman's argument cannot be used in this application, as no evidence has been presented that claims intention to abandon or relinquish was mandated. Carlson Precast business was voluntarily discontinued and for a period greatly exceeding 12 months. Section 32277 of the Town Code prohibits the issuance of the requested certificate in this instance and circumstance. Thank you very much.
Next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Mitchell Hirsch, and I live at 31 Fleetwood Road in Comac in the country.
Spell your last name first, please.
Sure, Hirsch.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead now.
As I said, I live at 31 Fleetwood Road in Comac, which is located in the country woods at Comac Development, which is virtually across the street from this location. I also have served for about the last 16, 17 years or more as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Country Woods at Comac Homeowners Association, and I'm legal counsel to the board. This meeting tonight was brought to my attention when one of my neighbors, who's more directly affected by this than I am, and who will speak in a moment, was knocking on my door a couple of nights ago, rather upset, he and his wife. They knew that I was on the board, and they wanted to know if the board had received notice of this application. It was absolute news to me. I knew absolutely nothing about it. And they asked me, would I come down to the board? So I'm confining my remarks not to the merit of the application, and I don't propose to be a zoning expert, but my grave concern is we are a community of 270 homes, I believe, and the closest of those homes is literally across the street from this location. I would think, without knowing the specifics of the statute, that we should have received some type of formal notice of this application and or meeting.
Well, you might have not been in at the 200 feet. So you might have not been in that. And that's why we do it 3 ways. So we post it, and it's advertised in Newsday, and that's why we do it that way.
Okay. Well, again, my role in coming here was to simply make you aware that there certainly was no notification. I don't know what the requirements, if any, are where the development is governed by a homeowners association in terms of notice. But just to let you know that we had no idea that this proceeding was occurring, and I thank you for hearing me.
Thank you so much. Next, please. May I have your name, please?
Dr. Stephen Silverman,
And your address?
60 Annandale Road, Comac, New York.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
To you or to my wife?
Well,
Okay, to you. To you I do. To her?
Be
so-
nice.
It's a whole nother story.
I'm not getting into that
Okay.
one. That's your problem. All right, is your wife going to speak?
Yes.
Then I need to swear you in.
Okay. Lisa,
Yeah, not to him.
okay. Lisa Silverman,
And your address.
60 Annandale Road.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll start. My house is, the back of my house directly faces this property. If I was good at tennis and I smacked a ball,
Okay.
good at basketball, not tennis, I could hit that property. So one of the arguments that legal counsel has tried to bring up in many cases is to show that there was continuous use of this property and it was never abandoned for more than 12 months. And I could tell you with 100% certainty that this property was abandoned for more than 2 years. Nobody came to the property, no trucks rolled on the property, the door was locked. There was absolutely no activity because nobody sees it better than I do. From the end of '08 to close to 2011. So with 100% certainty, this property was abandoned, the use was discontinued, absolutely nothing was going on, trucks were not rolling in, nobody was in that office, that door was closed. I've walked down to that property on several occasions to look at the sign, I even inquired about the purchase price. So that in itself should disqualify them for this. But I want to read another thing, because we also have aerial photos. Any structure used for a lawful nonconforming use shall not be repaired, reconstructed, or structurally altered to an extent exceeding 75% of the fair market value of the structure. No expansion of the amount of land or structure used for nonconforming use shall be permitted unless the bonings order grants a use variance. We have aerial photographs showing that the land indeed was expanded. Now, I've lived there since 1988, and I could tell you also for sure they never crushed cement. They never crushed trees. I have never had a complaint in living there prior to the last year and a half of noise. I sat in my backyard every morning when it was nice out. I could read a paper, I could entertain, I could see people. When they started crushing cement, because as they testified, they brought in concrete. They weren't manufacturing it, they weren't crushing it. It was quiet, it was reasonable. Any reasonable person could sit there and had peace and quiet on the property. Since they started doing this, the noise when they're crushing cement is so loud. Forget about not being in my backyard. I can't be in my front yard. I can't be in my house without blasting a TV. I can't be there. It's so excessive, and trees and banging and trucks at night, and they're dumping cement that they took from other areas. They were fined over a dozen times. All right, they have piles and piles of cement. There's dirt, there's dust and debris coming from it. It creates impurities in the air. It's unsightly to look at. It's on top of residential. And I appeal to you, I'm sure you're all nice people.
Excuse me. Rest of the
Okay, all
board.
right, okay, sorry. It's ruining our lives, all right? It's not possible to coexist with that type of activity that was, one, never legal. It's zoned for light commercial. We have aerial photographs also. I guess it's to somebody's interpretation of exactly what it is. They say they're still pouring concrete cements. We have aerial photographs. I have on an iPad, I can just show you all they have is equipment. There's no rings. What they do is take cement, they grind it. And again, if you were sitting in my house, we couldn't have this conversation because we wouldn't be able to hear each other. They grind it so then they could use it to make roads. It's beyond belief. It's heavy industrial use. Never zoned for that, never used for that. Because if it was used for that, I'm living here since 1988. I would have been calling the town every day with a complaint. And there's a reason why I never called the town ever, other than the last year and a half, because there was never a problem coming from the property. Okay. So with all due respect for these gentlemen, I'm sure they're a new class of money, gazillionaires. It's ruining our lives. Okay. We just want some peace and quiet to be able to live in our property and enjoy our property. We certainly can't with this use.
Thank you. Are you going to speak?
I was going to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay, what I was going to say is when we moved in, yes, they were producing cesspools, and I did have pictures, and I have the same exact history of pictures. And they did very good homework. I did the same homework, showing that they did make cesspools, and they were producing it. And in very good years, they were. And then I also have the same pictures where, like in 2007, they got rid of their hopper, and they were no longer really, they were kind of petering out and not really producing. And honestly, I don't know what they were doing at the end of the property. It was a little suspect. I'll give you the pictures. And then when the property was up for sale, it started in like 2009, like you could see this absolutely like 5 cesspools there. So maybe if I don't think they produced it all. There was no suspect, they didn't produce anything. So it was completely quiet behind our homes. Hopefully, you know, we were saying that we hoped that they were going to sell the property and maybe put up homes, but it didn't happen. But the property was not in use at all. We went into we knocked on the office door to see if we could talk to the owner during the week and to see if we could see what was going on with the property. No one was even ever there. We knocked ourselves personally to see. No one was in the office. So I don't know, unless he didn't want to answer the door. I can't imagine no one was there. And I also have and there were no cars and no trucks there. And I even have pictures from earlier when the property was in full use. There was never really a place for trucks. To the right of that little house where he had his offices, there was maybe a truck that was delivering or not, but they didn't keep trucks there. He didn't have his own trucks there. Maybe he did have deliveries of cement, of whatever he's saying, but there were no trucks that stayed there. So what they're asking for is a lot of different things. They're asking for, if we look step by step at that paper of what they're asking for, okay, the cesspool thing I can understand because it was there, but concrete crushing never took place. I think the lawyer is trying to tell you, like, did it ever happen? Maybe once a year? Did they recycle their own bad materials? Okay, but they never brought in concrete from a recycling center to recycle concrete. That never happened. They never did rock crushing. They never did. They never had heavy equipment maintenance facility. That was never on the property. I lived there. I could, from my bedroom. I wish you could come to my house. I could see that property perfectly. I mean, I have on my phone like a picture, so how close I could see it. And did they have an office? Yes. Did they have outdoors? They had a small shed. I have pictures of the property showing, and so do you now, with the small shed that they're showing, a material stockpile. I mean, they never had a truck and heavy equipment maintenance facility. That didn't exist. Like I'm sure you have the one little picture where they have one truck in the front. And that's about it. They never kept trucks on the property at all. But what I would like you to see is what they're doing now. There's not one ring. I have Google Earth here, which you could get, I could get. It's not like I snuck anywhere. There's not a ring on the property. So they didn't, they didn't make concrete rings. There's no concrete reeds. There's tons and tons of trucks. And they changed the whole topography of the land here. This land, if you look at if you have the things in front of you from 70, he brought you the pictures to now. They changed the use and they changed the amount of land that they're utilizing. So isn't that in itself a non-conforming use? That's against, they're not allowed to increase the land, and they went into the other property.
All right, I'm going to ask you to wind up, please.
All right, I'm sorry.
Fine, fine.
Okay, okay, I know this is just a personal thing, but can I just show you, like, for 2 seconds?
You can hear it.
Like
No.
what?
Put it to the microphone.
I can't?
Put it to the microphone. Just put it
No?
No.
It's the level of noise that.
Well, have you ever heard rock crushing? Like, this is from my
This-
backyard. This is not down there. This is like from where I live.
We have a video of it.
Can I just can I play it for you?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
It's a video. It's
Well, how
not
do
the
we know
rock
what the
crushing.
volume?
It's just the crane. They said.
It's just the,
It's not even the rock crushing. It's just the daily activity. This is the.
Well, the noise starts about 7 a.m., and they've played it on Mother's Day. They've been grinding rocks on Mother's Day. On Sunday, I reported it to the count, not the count. Like,
There's a record of violations
safety,
and fines,
safety.
which.
And it's usually, I mean, I couldn't even, this summer, I couldn't sit back there even with, I was embarrassed. I called so many times until they stopped for 2 weeks. I guess they got fined. I'm so nervous that I can't even, I don't know where, where do I look it up? Under gallery, I'm sorry.
This is just a daily activity.
This is me sitting in my backyard. Like, it's
That's
just.
not even the crushing. The
Can I give it to you? I can't.
You gonna give me your phone?
Yes.
This is an iPhone.
This is my lovely backyard, and this is what I hear.
Okay, all right, go back. Go ahead, I'll give you your phone back. Okay.
But
You wanna-
that's the least of it. That's just the daily
You wanna
noise.
look
When
at
they
Like, I've never had noise in my life.
All right. I don't even know how to shut it down. I don't know how to use this.
Got an expert right here.
Yeah, okay.
well, that's
All right.
not crushing.
Okay.
Crushing is much louder than
All right.
that.
Can you shut that down, please? All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you make your decision, I just would hope that someone from the board would like come to stand in some of our backyards just to see what's going on there, just to,
hear it.
and to hear it, but just also see that it's not what it was. This is not existing use.
Okay, thank you. The next
Do you want
person,
to see the
please?
pictures of their equipment, though?
Nope. I'm
That
very
it's-
familiar with it. I live right there myself.
But it's not the same equipment
I
that they're
know.
claiming that they had. It's completely different. This is on their property itself.
Are they labeled and everything?
Yes.
I did let
Okay, just give them to me. Okay,
what's there.
okay,
Doesn't look like a house.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next, please. What?
I would ask Mrs. Silverman if there's some way she can make a copy of what she showed this board. And on a CD or on something, and deliver it to the board so that it could become part of the record. Because what we have is a big blank in
Yeah.
the record if you were to read it.
I know. I mean, I don't know how we would even,
I can email it.
wait a minute.
That's fine.
Is that all right with you?
Sure, that's no problem.
Okay.
If you could email it to the town planning department, make sure you say it was what you presented before this board, okay? And that'll do. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we can keep her cell phone. Okay, next, please.
Bruce Ettenberg, 12 Pinecone Lane, Carmack, New York.
Spell your last name.
Ettenberg.
Okay. Raise your, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I come here representing the Carmack Community Association. We're a community association dedicated to maintaining and preserving the quality of life in Carmack. And we had a meeting 2 years ago with Mr. Frank DeRubius, the Director of Planning for the town of Smithtown, in which he presented a plan to have an overlay district in this area, which would increase some of the heavy industry in the area and possibly bring it into conformance so that rules could be maintained there, which he said hadn't been done in 30 years, and therefore operations like this can go on. And he said they had been to court to stop these things, and they were not successful because the town had not made them do it for 30 years. So I have one question for the board. If this is a non-conforming use, if this is zoned light industry, and it's being used as heavy industry, do you have the power to then say to them, okay, you can continue that use?
To say you
If
continue
this-
the
if-
heavy industry?
In other words, if this land is zoned light industry, and this is a non-conforming use, this is not a light industry use of this land, can you then have the power to say to this corporation, okay, you can continue doing this non-conforming use?
Yeah, we have that power. Yeah.
So what's zoning then? You know, if something is zoned light industry, and it's not being used as light industry, it's being used as heavy industry, what's the purpose of zoning?
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, people have the right to do a lot of things, and then when a local government comes up with rules to say that you can't do certain things, if you were doing them before the local government enacted the law, typically you have the right to continue. In Smithtown, the town board in about 1970 or so amended the zoning ordinance to create a procedure to certify which uses have the right to continue because they were lawful prior to the adoption of zoning, and which ones were not lawful, then they can't continue. And in roughly section 32275-ish, or 73, 76, somewhere around there, the town board designates the Board of Appeals of having the authority to issue or deny certificates of existing use. And basically, it says the board shall not issue a certificate of existing use unless it determines that the use lawfully existed prior to the time of enactment of laws that would otherwise prohibit what was going on, and that the use was not abandoned for more than 12 consecutive months.
Thank you for that explanation. I do want to tell you that after our discussion with Mr. DeRubius, the Community Association voted unanimously to oppose his plan to have the overlay district, which would increase the amount of heavy industry in that area.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Hi, good evening. Michelle Gary, Garry, 32 Old Northport Road, Kings Park.
All right, raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I just want to say I oppose this. I'm not going to reiterate what the other people said. I'm in agreement. I just want to say that my main issue is there are noxious odors emanating from this site. There are anywhere from 10 to 20 to sometimes maybe even more tractor trailers delivering and dumping materials of all different kinds every day of the week, sometimes 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I've gotten in my car after hearing noises that sounded like explosions, trying to investigate what it is. I'm very close to the site. I must be 201 feet away because I didn't get a notice, but I'm literally right on Old Northport Road. I made my complaint to the town. I guess when I first started smelling the odors, I didn't know who to go to and where it was coming from. I drove around and I saw a mountain that literally appeared, you know, in a very short period of time, and it looked like muck, sludge, mud covered in mulch, and that's what it smelled like. And it prevented me from doing yard work. It was in the springtime, I believe. It could have been the summer. My throat was actually burning. So I had made a complaint to the town. I got public safety to go down and look at it. The man came and he spoke to me about it, and he said, yes, there, and just to reiterate, there was nothing going on that site for years. I've lived in my home for 13 years. I've lived in Smithtown for 50 years. I was born in Smithtown General Hospital. I can say, and I'll sign a sworn affidavit, that there was nothing of this nature going on this property for a very long time. So when the man came from the town, he actually picked me up in a car and we drove through the site, and it was appalling. It was actually scary. I felt like, you know, I'm going to have to go Aaron Brockovich on this thing because it's like really out of hand. And he basically told me that it was being investigated on numerous levels for illegal dumping, for toxic waste, that truckloads were coming in from various parts of the state and even out of state. And I think that if for nothing else, this whole project can be summed up in one word: dump. It has become a dump. There are massive stumps having nothing to do with the storm, huge tractor trailers full of concrete debris. Looks like bridges and roads have been you know, broken up and delivered and dumped in Kings Park, in Smithtown. Mountains and mountains of dirt. There's another spot on the site that they just recently dug a huge hole. So I don't know what that's all about. I don't think this is at 110. I think it might be on somebody else's property. I know that there's a lot of different, there's at least 3 different pieces of property there. The whole entire site is a mess. It is a blight to the town. It's an embarrassment. It really is. And that's basically what I have to say about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, please. May I have your name, please?
Chris Wilkes,
Spell your last name, Chris.
Wilkes,
Okay, and your address?
62 Annandale Road, Comac.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you for the opportunity. My home backs Old Northport Road, right across the street from the property in question. I did not receive notice of this meeting directly, even though my home is as close as anyone else's. I know of others who also did not receive notice, and a neighbor who only received it today. Regardless, the property address listed on the notice is incorrect and does not exist. It says Kings Park Road and Old Northport Road.
That's a paper road, Kings Park Road.
And the case number is not listed on the agenda posted on the Town of Smithtown website. I had to call today to confirm this case was even being heard today. These problems indicate a clear intent to deceive, and we would have an even bigger crowd of angry residents here today if proper, clear advance notice was indeed given. As a result, no business decided here today in favor of the applicant can be considered legitimate. My wife and I newly bought into this area, and we were shown proof that there isn't proper zoning for the activity that is going on there. We pay nearly $25,000 a year in taxes to the Town of Smithtown. We expect our elected officials and their boards, including this one, to protect us. The ongoing illegal activity at 110 Old Northport Road makes living here unbearable. Aside from being a major eyesore, the constant and extremely loud rumbling from large mining trucks, diggers, and concrete crushers can be heard and felt throughout my entire house as it shakes. It often begins well before dawn, on several occasions well before the 7 a.m. that was quoted earlier. It persists deep into the night. Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry?
Slow down. Slow.
I'm trying to give you the courtesy of getting out of here. Anyhow, I will try to slow down. Well, it often begins well before dawn, and like I said, it often occurs deeper into the night than a normal workday would suggest. I myself work in the city. Sometimes I'm not home until 9 o'clock. There's still activity on that property at that time. 2 weeks ago, on a Sunday night, Monday morning, there was activity there at 3:30 a.m. My children can't sleep, my wife and I are miserable, and we respectfully ask for your help in not only turning this request down from a company that is clearly disobeying town laws and getting away with it, but also to require that they cease and desist all current operations immediately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Robin Kaplan, Kaplan. I live at 40 Annandale Road in Comac.
I'm Dr. Alan Kaplan. I live at 40 Annandale Road in Comac.
Okay. Will you both raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we've been living in our house for 24 years, and for years I was active on the Town Line Association, which was concerned with environmental problems in the area of Old Northport Road. At that time, I did a lot of door-to-door canvassing for a period of, I'd say, 4 to 5 years, assessing environmental concerns, and there were no concerns at that time, years ago, about noise in this area. We did have other concerns which were dealt with. Recently, the noise has gotten terrible. We live on the top of Annandale Road, so you figure it's a hill and we're at the very top. So we're further from the site, but the sound, the smell, it travels terribly. And it got to the point where I was flipped out. I work at home. I couldn't sit in my backyard. I complained to him a lot. And it really ruins quality of life for us. What I ended up doing was I told him that I need to get a fountain for the backyard. I started researching hotel fountains to put in my swimming pool, like the really big ones, just to cover noise. I ended up getting a fountain. It doesn't work. I mean, it works, but it doesn't cover up the noise. And again, the other issue is the traffic. That comes up, the noise from that we hear also. It's all the time. Thanksgiving night, it was quiet. I take my dog out in the backyard at night. That was a quiet night. It was great. Other than that, Indian Head Road, Old Northport Road, the traffic has increased. The noise is much, much louder. The fumes, I don't know what they're from. We've gotten them too. And again, the noise, I mean, if this isn't heavy industrial use, like I can't believe this is light industrial use because you can't sit in my backyard. So.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
I just want to say very briefly that, you know, we live in a beautiful community, great town of Smithtown, and I didn't buy my home. I've been there 24 years to live across the street from a industrial complex like this. And I don't think it's fair. I don't think we should be asked to do this. You know, I'm not going to reiterate the things that have been said before, but this noise is new, and we just don't want it. So we ask you to help us.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Michelle Lubman, Lubman. I live at 58 Annandale Road. I am the lone person who got the letter.
Raise your right hand,
Oh,
please.
okay.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. It was a certified letter that was delivered to my home in the middle of the day, and the only reason why we received it is because my husband came home lunchtime because he had forgotten something. Most of us are working people. We are not home in the middle of the day, nor was there any notice to the neighbors that a registered letter as far as this meeting was concerned. So I believe that they have not been upfront in their intentions from the beginning. I've been a stay-at-home mom for many years. I have never heard the noise before, and it has been dead silence for years up until about a year ago, sometime early in 2011. So the fact that they have been doing this work all hours of the night, regardless of whether they're allowed to do this work, would lead me to believe that these are people that can't be trusted to follow the law.
Okay.
So rather than reiterate again what everybody has said, you cannot go outside, did not open up my pool, couldn't be outside, windows are shut in the winter, in the summer. I have children with asthma, my house with the dust that comes through when they're working. It has really affected all of us.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, please. May I have your name, please?
Absolutely. My name is Daryl Goodman. I'm at 32 Annandale Road in
Spell
Comac.
spell your last name.
Goodman.
Raise your right hand, please.
Sure, and it's Daryl for first name.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
First, I'd like to say that I'm not generally opposed to businesses existing in our area. I think that obviously we want companies, but with respect to this particular operation, there are two things. One, I did get a notice in my mailbox. As the other person said, it is factually incorrect. There is no such intersection of, it says northwest corner of Old Northport Road and Kings Park Road. In Kings Park, there is no such intersection.
I know.
Yeah.
Kings Park Road is a paper street. That's the
Yeah.
address.
So, nonetheless, it was confusing. Secondly, I'd like to say that with respect to KPE2 LLC, and I understand, ownership entities, but in terms of being able to find any kind of public face about this organization, very difficult to find any information about this organization in terms of a website or any other information that describes who they are as a neighbor in our community. In fact, in a Google search, the only thing that I could find that was even close to them was an article from the Times-Beacon Record newspaper, June 7, 2012, which discusses them. It basically indicates that the company's attorney, Anthony Gardnell of Farrell Fitz, did not return calls for comment, said that KPT2 is also requesting permission to operate a tree farm on 19 acres of land in Old Northport Road. The article, which I'll submit to you if you'd like, also indicates that that is essentially intended to use to change their ability to be under the jurisdiction of the zoning boards here as well. So, in terms of having any kind of public face and being, somebody that would be a positive neighbor in our community, I haven't been able to find any evidence of that yet. With respect to reiterating other points, I won't waste the board's time other than to say, in my own backyard, I do hear loud booms, including ones that do sound like explosions, even late into the evening. I do have 2 young children. It's not the easiest thing in the world.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
Would you like this?
You can hand it to us if you want to.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for hearing me for a few moments. My name is Cheryl Kriegel. I live at 56 Annandale Road in Comac.
Spell your last name.
Kriegel. I also...
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Now, go ahead.
I also did not receive notice of this meeting, which I think affects all of us and our quality of life in our homes. My husband and I have lived on Annandale Road. This past October was 20 years. The probable worst complaint that I had in living from a noise level on my street in all those years was some difficulties, I'd say probably 16 years ago, because the original owners of the property had dogs that were used as security and would bark all night long. There was no other noise. There was no other issues with light or heavy equipment. We certainly knew that there was a facility down the road from us, because it is actually just at the bottom of our property, which is the street up from Old Northport Road. We raised our family there. We have been paying taxes in Comac, Smithtown for many years, and yes, I do believe that you are here on our behalf also, which is why we're taking a few moments. And excuse me, it is not something I usually do, speaking in public. We do hear the equipment there, 7 o'clock or earlier in the morning. We do work. We hear that going out in the morning before we're leaving our homes. We hear that on Saturday. I do have to say we typically don't hear much early on Sundays, but we hear not just equipment, we hear large trucks, we hear deliveries, we hear equipment. I do not know exactly what type of equipment it is, but we hear equipment through the early evening, into the evening, and trucks that are booming down Old Northport Road, and also I would say probably Indian Head Road also, because that backs up also into our property. We have always enjoyed our home. I would have to say from sometime in 2008, and I can't pinpoint exactly, until sometime in the spring of 11, there was not a sound from that property. It was quiet. We have always used our backyard. We've always enjoyed family and entertaining, and that quality of life has totally been diminished and actually destroyed. And I did want to take a few moments to share that with you and hope that you will help us out with this.
Thank you so much. All right? Thank you. Very quick, go ahead. Your name?
Mark Kriegel.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Also residing at 56 Annandale. I'm not going to reiterate the sounds,
please.
smells, the dust clouds. What I do want to address is the continuity issue. And when my wife just mentioned 2008 to 2011, that absolute silence, that was mostly absolute silence, because what was breaking the silence was there was constantly kids in there doing dirt bikes, motorcycle bikes, which means that that land was open and available for kids to play in. There were motorcycle racing up and down those hills. So we knew that there was nothing going on there. So that's what I wanted to say regarding the continuity issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ross Hirschman, Hirschman, and I live at 80 Annandale Road in Comac, and I've lived there for 20...
Raise your right hand first. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Now, do you have any new information, or are you going...
Just the same kind of thing where for my 24 years of living there, I never knew anything was going on at 110. It was so quiet. Now for the last 2 years, it's gotten very noisy at all different times of day and night. Again, sometimes I've heard it at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I didn't quantify the level of sound. I didn't get a decibel meter. I was always hoping that it was just some temporary thing, something being built and it would stop. Okay. And it was just by accident that I found out from a neighbor. I also didn't get a letter informing of this. And then when I did find out that this meeting was going on tonight, I drove on Old Northport Road to see, because there's supposed to be, I thought, some kind of a sign.
There were 2 signs.
Well, I didn't see any on Old Northport Road. I saw one on the side street.
Yes, well, I was there. The sign fell, and then we asked them to put it back up.
Oh, I guess when I was there, it wasn't there. But okay, yeah, that. I guess that's it. It's just a noise thing for me. It wakes me up, and it's so loud. And during the day, too, I notice. It's so loud that it's even noisy during the day, outside or inside.
Thank you. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to repeat the same thing, that doesn't help the record. If you have new information, that's fine. But if you're going to just continuously say the same exact thing, that's not going to help the record when we look through it. Let me have your name, please.
Jim Rayo. I live at 2 Old Road in Kings Park, New York.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. One thing was, I actually stood before this board a few years ago.
Wait a minute.
Rayo, R-A-O. So I stood before this board a few years ago, and I am within that 200 feet because I had to send them a letter, and I did not receive one for this. Luckily, I was informed. But not to reiterate everything, but I have 2 children under the age of 4. I've lived there 8 years. I'm on the corner of Old Road and Old Northport Road. The trucking over the last year has been unbearable. It is in the back of my yard. I can't even go outside with the kids. And I work in the city late hours, and it is all night throughout various days, Saturdays as well. And it's really making it unbearable.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, please.
Scott Singel, I'll spell it Singghel.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Do you have any new information?
Yes. I am not one of the people who's close enough to speak about the quality of life. I do want to mention that I am speaking on behalf not only of myself as a resident of Comac, but on behalf of the Town Line Association to say that we too formally oppose this request. I also would like to remind the board that when making this decision about whether this is continued use, to not only consider what's already been said with regard to whether activity has continued on the property, but also to remember that this is a new entity, that there was a sale of the property in 2011, which took place after the zoning changes were made. So in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not speaking from a legal perspective, that this is not continued use from an existing use from prior to the zoning changes. This is a new entity that needs to respect the zoning that already exists. So I request, and we request, that the board take that into consideration.
Thank
We also would like to remind the board that Town Line Association has been before the board to oppose several zoning issues with regard to Carlson and neighboring properties, and that the result of this decision has impact for the community and the other properties in the area, and that we respectfully ask that you take that into consideration as the precedent that this will set for future sales of other non-conforming use properties.
Thank you so much. Next, please. May I have your name, please?
Larry Shaw, 24 Enchanted Forest Road, Kings Park.
All right. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm going to be brief. I know you've heard it all before, but I do want to say one thing.
Please.
You have to decide if you believe that there was proof submitted to you that this use continued throughout this period of time and that it wasn't abandoned for a period of 12 months. The reason I'm speaking to you is you've got people on both sides who are telling you two different things, and you have to decide who you believe. So, yeah, maybe my testimony is cumulative, but unless you're going to decide, unless you're going to tell me right now that what I say you've decided already, the reality is I drive past this site every day, multiple days a week, to work, to every place that I go, and from 2008, 2009, into 2010, someone used an expression before in talking to me. It was a ghost town. There was nothing going on there. Dirt bikes were driving over there because nothing was going on. So it seems to me that if you're going to be deciding whether this use continued from 1968 or whenever the code went into play up until now, you're basically confronted with a situation where you've got a few people who say it did, but their testimony was pretty vague, and you've got a lot of people who live right there, who drive by it on a regular basis, and who've told you point blank that there was significant periods of time when the use did not exist.
Thank you. Just let me tell you that, first of all, there's no environmental report. So this board is not going to make any decision, especially tonight, and it will probably take some time for us to make a decision so that we go through everything again. Okay?
I understand that, but the point really is the witnesses on one side.
I understand that.
And, you know, Mr. Armentano's got presented what he presented, and I don't think he submitted prima facie entitlement to the relief he seeks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, quickly?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to touch on a few points, I think there is some confusion. We're in an industrially used area, as everyone is aware of. There are a few uses in the vicinity. We have Jaswali site, which is operating, and we have the Lettieri site, which is also operating. They are a transfer station, so that may be some of the noise and complaints you're hearing, and I'm speaking on the record. They had their chance.
Please.
This operation is producing concrete. They are crushing concrete. These activities are not occurring at night. I mean, one of my witnesses, one of the principals, has told me that that's not what they're doing. I don't need to call him back up. I am reiterating what he has said to me. So I believe there's some confusion. There may be overlap in the noise issue, but we obviously have to be consistent with the town's noise ordinance, and if we violate that, we're at issue with that. So I think there are controls in place for that. There was an issue brought up originally about the abandonment, and this town's code reads about the words abandonment, which is an older definition, and under the law of the state of New York, the abandonment needs to have a complete cessation of use for the period of time. A dwindling down of an operation is not a complete cessation. You need 100% stoppage of activity. That has not occurred on the site. Even though the operations were not as loud as they once were, you did have activities. You do have the Carlsons, the prior owners, operating in some form. They are selling material. They are working on the site. So the operation in itself is still viable. It has not been stopped. And when our owners came to the property, they turned it up a notch, obviously, and that's what is causing the concern. But the fact is the use continued, and part of what a savvy landowner would do in the case of the Carlsons and their counsel would have advised them is, even though you are dwindling, you are holding on to a pre-existing non-conforming use. So in order to keep that alive, you would do operations, maybe not the full-scale tilt, but you would still operate, and that is what Mr. Carlson was doing, and I think his affidavits testified to that fact, that he was continuing to preserve that issue. So I will wrap up very briefly.
Yes, please.
I think I touched on most of the points, and I think, there is obviously a problem here of people coming to a nuisance that they perceive. I mean, this property, this use did not drop out of the sky. As you can see from the aerials, this thing had been operating and basically pumping pretty hard for a long period of time. I mean, these aerials scale back into the 40s, and they proceed into 2010. And in the span of time where I'm here in 2008, when things were quiet, the operation is still looking viable. You see rings on the property. There is movement if you scale through the activities on the years that you're hearing. The issue, and I'll just end with this one point, the sentiment that, dirt bikers were on the property, so obviously nothing else was happening, so they made it a recreation park, is incorrect, because I know for a fact that my clients had to chase kids off their property very recently because they are actively been on the site. Kids will get onto anything that's not completely manned. Half of the site is vacant, and the back is not operating. So kids are getting onto the site in some way, and they're driving their dirt bikes around, and my clients have tried to keep them off. So the fact that you have heard them in the past, they're still on the property as well. And we are operating, so I just want to put that in for the record.
Before you go,
I had a couple things.
yeah, do you want to ask any questions or say anything?
Let Tony go first.
Go ahead.
I guess basically in the interest of full disclosure, I obviously am from Kings Park. As a matter of fact, Carl Carlson is my next door neighbor and has been for 37 years. I'm very familiar with the site, obviously. I've been to Jesuali's. I rented from Capuano right next door. I go to Atiri all the time. I can assure you that, that's awfully loud. I can assure you that the use that I had witnessed growing up and being in the area is certainly not the use that's going on there now. The Carlson use, there may have been ancillary stockpiling, trucking, and things that went with the manufacture of cesspool rings. It seems to me that the current use has become, the primary use has become rock crushing, recycling, and that a secondary use may or may not be the manufacture of cesspool rings. I guess my question to you is, how do you justify the last 12 months if the primary use has been abandoned as manufacturing cesspool rings and the ancillary uses being these things that your client is seeking?
The degree to which the property was used for concrete manufacturing was the primary use, but as you said, there was ancillary uses, and to the extent that this was screening and stockpiling, it is ancillary in a sense to concrete manufacturing, but in the same sense, the Carlsons were mining the site. They were just selling sand. There was that screening and selling of sand. There was that activity. So I don't think that's necessarily precast is the primary. I think you have several primary things that occurred on the site, and then there are ancillary functions next to it. I do think you have screening and sand mining as a use that occurred. You had the concrete manufacturing, which was a majority of the use, but throughout that time, they were still screening. The trucks were constantly parked there, so I think trucks are a truck, contractor yard, that welding operation that occurs there, that is an additional primary use on the site. The crushing is a periodic use. The crushing has increased. Part of that stems from the issues with the consent order from the DEC, and that they are, this site, when they came to it, Other things happened on the site which, have happened in the area. So there was issues dealing with buried rubble on the site. A majority of that rubble under the consent order from the DEC has to be removed. That is part of what is occurring now is they are completing that consent order. I mean, they're under the order of the state of New York to do that. So they have to get that done. They have poured rings, not frequently, but they are trying to hold on to one of their primary uses because this is a difficult time in the economy for people to figure out what exactly they are going to do. There is not a lot of call for cesspools. There may be more now that there's been a catastrophic effect to the island. There is going to be somewhat of an uptick in the requirements to need that. But my clients are trying to keep all their options open because they bought the property with an understanding that it could be used for a variety of things: concrete manufacturing, soil screening, truck parking, concrete crushing. So they're trying to use what they can as they can. So I believe there are several primary operations occurring on the site.
All right. Yeah, yes. Mr. Flynn has
I would
questions for you.
basically like to find out what exactly the use is. You described in the beginning of your presentation different activities, but just a couple of questions. Are there businesses that lease parts of the property? Are there tenants?
I don't believe so. Not at this time.
Okay. Did the business exist before it purchased the property?
Did the entity?
Yeah, I mean, like, where did they do the activities before they bought this property?
My clients operate under several company names, and they operate in various places. So it's, KPE is an entity formed for the purchase of this property, man, and
Okay.
as is commonly done.
Okay. What basically goes on at the property? Like, how many yards come in, or what comes in on a daily basis? What goes out? I mean, how many rings do they sell? I mean, just in some sort of round numbers. What do they do?
At this, I don't have that information. I can obviously prepare that and submit that.
Okay.
I don't have that information right now.
Absolutely not.
The planning director asked me to ask what is going to happen to material that was brought on and spread on the property near the USA Recycling property.
That's the subject of the consent order, and I believe that is being taken care of through the DEC. That's my understanding, that is what is being done with that material.
Okay. What kinds of DEC permits are in existence for this property?
They're operating with a 360 registration permit, and that is what I believe all that they have from the DEC at this time.
Okay, and what is a 360 registration permit?
It allows for the removal and use of solid waste. I mean, it's a solid waste permit, and that's what was part of the operations.
Okay. How many people work there?
I'd roughly say 12 to 14. I mean,
Okay.
there's mechanics, people rotate through there, their trucks, you guys moving dirt. I mean, there's a lot of different,
Okay.
I'd say 12, 13.
Does putrescible material come on the property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I think that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Have you, specifically during the periods 2008, 9, 10, have you seen any financial records or any kind of billing records for any of these companies as to how much activity was going on from their records?
I have not. I have actually asked Mr. Carlson for that, and he was just, it was difficult to get things from him, so.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
No, absolutely not. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
You really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay. I'm going to keep this only because I can read this. Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our hearings for tonight. Thank you.